facility reservoirs, fractional species energy. So there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and diagnosis of it here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 ways of diagnosis. What did I say first? 8 to 16 then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 16. 16 tests you can do.
Okay, perfect.
Of asterisks, mechanisms and things there. 16.
Thank you, Barry.
But you'll appreciate where I'm coming from, Amy. Until I read the paper, I can't say you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that I'm low on the people testing, you know, even before I started my forensic processing and going to school for digital forensics and things like that. I tested it out on 200 people.
But the thing to do is there are 16 different tests there. They can all be found chemically with a spectrometer or your electron microscope. There are 16 different ways, different things that can be tested.
Yeah, I know the electro.
Yeah, but there are 16 there. And when I read the paper, you don't need all 16. When I read the paper, the first thing I will do is say, yeah, Amy is absolutely right. But I can't say yes until I've read the paper. Or you'll all go to court and say, this scientist says yes, and then they say, no, it's not been proven, and then I owe you lots of money.
Yeah,
At least I'm on the right path.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're on exactly the right path. What you need to do is you have to patent your idea.
I've already
she
patented
has
it.
already done that. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, our lawyer asked her too.
Right, patent your idea.
That's really good.
Now, there are 16 things there you can test. From spectroscopes, electron microscopes, all sorts of things where you can identify one type of burn from another. And if you do that, you write your research paper. You write your research paper, and then this is the scary bit. You write your research paper, you send it to 2 or 3 scientists. They will read it and they will peer review it. And then if they say, no problem here, Amy, then you can publish it. And once you've published it, or had it peer reviewed, not even published, once you've had it peer reviewed, then every scientist can say, yes, there are different types of burns for different implants in the body.
All right.
Okay.
You're on the right track.
Great.
Absolutely on the right track.
Okay.
But you've got to have, it's got to be bomb-proof in court.
Yeah, that's it.
Right,
I
and that's
want
what we're trying to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
you know.
And until that, when anyone asks me, I will say, no, I haven't read it.
That's why I asked about the phaser waves and the mechanical waves
Yeah.
and the water waves.
Okay?
Because using the transmission with the phaser waves, they stimulate an electromagnetic response to the water waves, which can oscillate, right? They vibrate,
That
force
was-
of vibration moving back and forth.
that was only proven, what you've just said now, was only proven within the last year by Dennis Henshaw, Bristol University. And I'll tell you where it's on my No Hiding Place paper.
Okay.
The proof is on page 1, where the water molecules He went a little bit ahead of you. Professor Dennis Henshaw, Bristol University, page 1. He's actually written down the process that says you're right.
Okay, so I'm on the right path.
He's written down the process that says you're right, because he has proven that the energy is accumulative. Now, the people you're arguing against, they have said, when the photons come in, and everything travels by photons, when the photons come in the wave, there isn't enough energy in the photon to cause this damage in a cell.
But with like a neural oscillation or a fast vibration, right?
Yeah.
That's where the mechanical waves
Yeah,
come
no.
into play because they store energy.
Yeah, no, you're right. But you're going into the ionizing and non-ionizing waves. Now, non-ionizing spectrum, you've got radio waves, long wave, all different types of radio waves. The beginning of ordinary light, they are non-ionizing. In other words, the argument was that each photon coming in, and they travel as individual photons, even though they travel in waves.
Right. Okay.
They are individual photons, but they follow a waveform.
But it doesn't okay.
Right. But I'll come on with this. You've got the wave photon duality here. They travel in waves but act as particles. Now, each photon, and the argument has always been that microwaves and all the other radio waves, each photon does not have enough energy, the quantum energy, to cause this amount of damage when it strikes an atom, to move the electron to produce a wave like X-ray or gamma rays.
What about cold fusion?
Well, hang on, yeah, I'm coming to that. It doesn't have it. Now, and Dennis Henshaw, and it's on page 1 of that,
Yeah.
and our argument, right up until this year, has been, and I wrote a mathematical paper on it, proving it. My argument has been there is an accumulative effect because there are so many photons so quick that they would act as an accumulation, not one photon. But it could never be proved. And it's only been proven this year. And on page 1 of my No Hiding Place paper, Dennis Henshaw has shown that there is an accumulative effect.
What's his name again? Dennis?
I've got the paper.
We've got the paper and the explanation. He has shown,
It was the public inquiry, it's the annexes.
Dennis Henshaw,
This report is really good.
yeah, it's the one you've submitted to the inquiry.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, Dennis Henshaw
It's the one I prefer.
has proven that the waves are accumulative. It's on page 1. And here, he said, and this is you, he's just proven what you're wanting me to say. The idea that cell phone radio waves do not have the quantum energy to damage DNA and therefore cannot cause ill health or burning is a fallacy. It is flawed at a number of levels from the very physics upon which it is supposedly based, to chemistry and biology. Most of all, the idea is not borne out that tens of thousands of peer-reviewed studies reporting the biological effects from exposure to electric, magnetic and electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation, including those associated with radio waves, by cell phones. So what he's proven there is that the accumulative effect will produce what you have just said. So you are right, and it's only been proven. I mean, you are thinking ahead of the rest of the world. You've obviously got a brilliant brain there. In terms of
Nobody does that.
in terms of quantum physics, and if you want, I can give you the mathematics to prove it.
Yeah, that would be great.
I wrote a paper on it.
Yeah, that would help me out, at least on a scientific level, be able to correlate all the information that I'm trying to collect.
I
At
wrote a
least
paper.
evidence-wise, you know.
I wrote a paper for 16 university mathematicians. I studied higher maths at university. And I wrote a paper believing that, but mathematics doesn't prove that. And what you've been telling me, everything, he's just proved it. And my mathematics has now been verified. Okay? So you now have the mathematics and him proving that what you have said is correct. So you've got my brain and his brain agreeing with your brain. But until you've had someone else independently do it and put the two together where they identify it, every scientist will say it is not proven, which is my answer.
Right.
I can't stand up in court and say you're right. I know you're right because he's right and I know I'm right.
I don't know I'm right. This is theoretical.
But in court, I would have to say it is not proven. Therefore, it is not right.
I understand.
Right? And this is where they are going to get you. But I'll give you the mathematics, and you can quote my mathematics. You've already submitted the paper. If you can get another independent laboratory to do these experiments, compare it to yours, you've won. Write a research paper and have it patented. Write a research paper and send it to a magazine and have it published. And then every scientist in the world will then say, when they stand up, including me, and say, yes,
This is
produced by
possible.
Amy, here's the paper, been published.
This is partly what Paolo's wanting to try on
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
Can I take pictures?
You can keep it.
Oh, okay. Thank you so
Excuse,
much.
do you want me to dedicate it to you?
Can I have your signature on it? And I'll
Absolutely.
sign it, you know?
There's 4 pages, right? It's 4 pages. Okay?
You're absolutely magnificent.
So, yeah. I'll write it to you, Amy. A-M-Y, Amy?
Yes,
Or
sir.
I-E?
No, AMY.
A-M-Y. Okay. Dedicated.
Thank you.
Dedicated to Amy. Wishing you well. I'll sign it. My hand's a bit shaky, but then again, I'm 78 now.
Oh.
So we put a kiss.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you are. Dedicated to Amy. That's a C. Dedicated to Amy. Now, Amy. And I'll put a kiss there.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna love this.
Yeah. Alison will be upset now because she didn't get them.
She got draw a dedicated copy, no?
But that's the mathematics that prove what you've been telling me is that's the mathematics that proves it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
It's 4 pages.
I gotta square up on my mathematics.
Gotta go into the atomic structure there and everything.
Well, this is independent laboratory, what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that
you
does
need
tell
to
me
get-
that we do have a chance to prove this.
Yeah.
You know?
Until you actually have it independently tested and verified, the answer will always be no. And when you asked me the question, whoever it was asked me the question, and I thought,
It was the lawyer, I think, who asked the question.
yeah, the lawyer. When you asked me the question, the lawyer asked me the question, and I mean,
Right now, you'd have to
I
say
So
know.
no.
this has to deal more with the potassium, the iron, and the chloride?
yeah,
Okay.
sodium, yeah, that goes with all those.
Which is why a lot of people, when they eat bananas, they get heartburn.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
Why do you think
What do they get?
yeah. You can upset your calcium, chlorine, calcium, sodium, all of those, yeah. But, yeah, when the lawyer asked that,
Yeah.
I keep always here the last 2,000 papers I've read. I have 2,000 papers, and as they come in, then I throw the bottom ones away. But until I read the paper that says yes, you're right, then
People say no.
everyone in the world will say no.
Right, right.
Yeah, I understand that.
If you want to go into the maths there, Amy, an easy way to go into it is Nernst, N-E-R-N, Nernst. Nernst. How do you spell Nernst? N-E-R, Nernst. It's not an English name. Nernst.
N-E-R, nuns?
N-E-R, Nernst. I can't spell it now.
N-U-N-S-T?
Something like that. Any A-level biologist would tell you Nernst, how to spell it. It's
I think I've come up with it. I think I've come across that terminology.
any A-level biologist would tell you. And it's he lays out the mathematics of that going through the experimental stage.
Okay. What about the zeta waves?
Those are in the brain. Oh yeah, I haven't got those. I've just got the first four.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean there are more than that, but I only wanted the main ones, just as an example, really.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
But in my brain paper there, the one you've got, I've laid out what they will do anyway. Your next step now is to say, find a nice friendly chemist, biologist, lay out, like when you're at school, doing an experiment, you lay out how to do it, and then results, conclusion, just carry on with that. And then if they get the same results you get, you've won. It's quite an anxious time.
Yeah.
And then, excuse me, and then you've got to send your paper off for peer review to a professor somewhere to peer review it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is primarily what this thing on the 3rd is to do with
Yeah.
peer review.
And that can take some time, peer reviewing, and it's incredibly a nervous time. It is a nervous time. But then, they might come back and say you need to change this and this,
Well, I know I'm not going to be 100% accurate, because one,
Yeah,
I'm only dealing with the basic equipment that I could afford,
yeah,
and like the one the electron microscope, that could probably cost $1,500 to $2,000.
yeah. But what are you doing? It's like hiring a JCB, one of these big road diggers. You don't hire you don't buy a JCB, you hire the driver and the machine
Right.
for an hour. You can hire a spectroscope, atomic spectroscope, or you can hire the lady and the machine for an hour in a laboratory. And if you're good, and you've got friends at university, a fourth year student, third or fourth year student will do it for you for a quarter of the cost.
Okay.
But since they're a student and they're not really a grad,
No.
would they be considered?
Provided
I think it's the professor.
provided the
approves it.
professor
Yeah.
agreed with their result.
Yeah.
They do the maths, they write it out, they show the professor, and he says, yep, no, this is
That's
okay.
correct.
The professor signs it off, but you're paying students' fees, not professors' fees.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
I did.
You get that done.
I've done this research because I know, like, I needed it patented. I know that I needed to take certain steps in order to validate my work, and to get it approved within the court system. So I made sure to do all that proper research.
What was you asking me about the different waves?
I was asking about the mechanical waves and the water waves and the transference from the energy systems to the points of thresholds on the body. If that makes sense. Or how the mechanical waves can be transferred through the water waves. Because the mechanical waves store the energy, right? So if they do like a neural oscillation or a cold fusion tactic where they're vibrating the electrons as a fast amount of rate, it produces that energy. And then the mechanical wave produces that energy and it could shoot it through the water waves, which our bodies are made out of 60 to 70% water. So how can they... I know it would go through a path. It has to be sent through a path, right? Through the neurological or the central nervous system. But can that in itself produce enough energy to cause attacks, like the sensations of the nerves, like the tingling sensations, the electrical? I guess I'm trying to figure out the conversion from the mechanical wave through the water waves in the body. If that,
You're talking about a longitudinal wave or a transverse wave, and I'm trying to work out which one you mean.
well, that has to deal with sound waves. With the sound waves,
Yeah, go on.
right? Sound waves and mechanical waves are similar with the transverse and the longitude, but the mechanical
Longitudinal
wave
waves,
uses
yeah.
water waves. And since the mechanical waves work with X-rays, microwaves, infrared, infrared, sonic, ultrasonic, weapon systems, that is a key component of how they're producing these effects inside our body. What I'm trying to figure out is the use of the water wave in the mechanical wave, in the sound wave, because both sound waves and mechanical waves use transverse and longitudinal. Trying to figure out is the use of where the mechanical waves is an additional with the water wave in the mechanical wave, in the sound wave. So one sound waves and mechanical waves use transverse and longitudinal, but using the water wave is the use of where the mechanical waves is an additional with the water wave. Figure out how that in the sound wave. So one sound waves and mechanical waves use transverse and longitudinal, but using the water.
Spring. I don't know if you did this at school, or those slinkies they're called. Aren't they?
Right.
If you move one, then the energy goes right the way along and pushes the other end.
Right.
That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave
It's going up
is
and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave,
It's going up and down.
electromagnetic. If you move one, then the energy and you put it on goes right the way along and pushes the transverse wave. That's a mechanical wave. The In your body that is the same size as the wave or a mathematical multiple of the wave. So, for instance, the sweat gland is the same size as 5G. So when 5G hits the sweat gland becomes, because it's wet, the sweat gland becomes an aerial. It's how aerials work.
A Neuralink, which is the node G, which can connect to a neurotransmitter, which has to be some form of chip or operate chip inside of their body or implant. Now, when analyzing these and when the victims are holding the device, those radio frequencies are getting captured into that recording because they're on the invisible spectrum. We don't see them, but they're still being transmitted to us in order to affect us, especially with the voice-to-call technology systems. So when I bring them up, I have to amplify them to an audible level. And I capture a lot of the radio communications from the drones and the satellite systems, along with the military and the government projects that they are doing. Like in Allison's case, she's Project Genesis. She also has graphene in her body, and I know they're manipulating the heavy metals in there, along with the amino acids and the acrylic acids as well, and doing mRNA and DNA manipulation processing. So I am listening basically to the personal area network systems of their body, along with their heart monitoring systems as well. I could sometimes capture the heartbeats of the victims from their computer systems being transferred. I could capture them uplinking to the satellite systems and to their locations. I know they're using hybrid cloud services with that as well.
Okay.
Now, my portion of the forensics, I could identify the weapon systems because the criminals are actually purchasing them.
Oh yeah, there's a patent on them. I think there are 3. I've got 3 patent numbers of people, that you can buy them.
Yeah. That was interesting because we explained to the lawyer that actually some of these weapons that you can purchase them.
Yeah.
Know? And he was like, well, can I have examples of this? I think somehow can even be reproduced. I think if you could make out of a microwave a weapon, theoretically. So I think the access to these weapons is more and more easy, I think, from what I understand. And he wanted examples of this, for example.
Like in my report that he
what weapons would use, which kind of injuries they could cause. Yeah. I know that was one of the questions he had. So.
Go ahead, Allison.
Just in the report, apologies. Yeah. So in my report, for example, one of the main sort of components of it is the fact that I'm being live streamed on the deep web, and there are people logging in to pay to either attack and or watch me.
Those would be your live torture chambers or red rooms.
Yeah. So that's one of the main sort of things that's going on in it, isn't it?
Yes.
So this is mainly done for, I understand, trafficking purposes, human trafficking, and also to test these weapons. But I think I once heard a video of yours where you said that actually everything was known in the 70s already about
50s.
the 50s, yeah.
Yeah,
About
I
the
mean,
effects
I've
of
traced
these
back this
weapons,
technology
on the
since
human body,
1820. Yeah.
There are, oh gosh, there are many reasons why people are targeted.
Like a mobile electrophone.
Very many reasons. It could be if you are in one nation and you wanted to occupy the nation next door, an easy way to do it would be to, let's say if Indonesia wanted to take over Australia. Simple example. One of the ways, and there are many, many ways you can do this, one of the ways would be to just target the people who are susceptible in Australia with certainly microwaves, like with the different pulse frequencies. Indonesia could just microwave lots and lots of people in Australia, but people are all different. So what works on one person will not work on another, and women they have 13 different responses to microwaving than men. So you need to decide.
In addition?
Sorry?
In addition.
In addition to men, yeah. So, but what does go on is teams from one country will go into another country, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of people, and that's being microwaved. And they could find a general frequency that will do most of the women, and a general frequency that would do most of the men.
Would that be through the electrical stimulation or frequency control?
Well, I'll come on to that. It could be just to target pregnant women.
Right. Which I capture a lot of.
Maybe, you know.
I've
Yeah.
written a couple of papers
Miscarriages
on that.
and
It could be to target pregnant women. And I wrote, I don't know if I sent you my zygote paper,
You did, yeah.
the zygote paper from
The No Hiding Place.
No Hiding Place, yeah.
place for
Now,
we're using it at the moment within a public inquiry
Yeah.
that Ikator is responding to. We're using your paper.
yeah, with this one that I
It's
wrote,
very interesting, this one.
you may not want to kill everybody, but you may want to have them
Disabled or
disabled or mentally disformed somehow. And in the No Hiding Place, I listed all of the different growth stages for the 39 weeks
Yeah, I
of
read
the
it.
baby.
Incredible.
And you can target, if you wish to, any one of those. You might want to bankrupt the country, but not kill everybody. And then when you've bankrupted the country, you can move in hordes of immigrants and take over the factories, the national health systems, the transport systems. And before very long, and in the terms we're thinking of, 20 years is not very long. they'll easily wait 20 years, 30 years
Mhm.
to take over a country. And it's a lot more efficient and a lot more inexpensive than sending in tanks and bombs.
Mhm.
Because if you send in tanks and bombs, the next thing you've got to do is rebuild the country. Whereas
Yeah, of course.
you take one of your big hospitals and you could just take over it as it is, and then all the hospitals and all the superstructure.
So are you saying that mesh network systems were basically in place prior?
Sorry?
So mesh network systems, is that sort of what you're describing, taking over a whole area or a whole
Oh, yeah,
vicinity
yeah.
at one time?
That can be done. You don't even have to visit the country. To my knowledge, there are 16 now known transmitters on this planet, whereby if you wanted to take over a country, you can actually send the microwaves up to the ionosphere, up to the ozone layer, which is an electrical conductor,
Right.
reflect it back
Yeah.
down any schoolboy geometry, we'll cover that. And you can slowly destroy all of the animals, all of the reproduction in the animals. You get rid of all the insects. There is no pollination of plants. And the country goes bankrupt. And then you move in piece by piece, bringing fruit to cure any illness, vitamin C deficiency or whatever. And it can be done over 20, 30 years. I was having dinner with one of the royal families abroad, and the king was saying to me, he just said, Barry, he says, if we can't stop these people, I will not have a country in 50 years. They will have taken over
Or the
my entire
arms,
country.
everything disappeared. I heard that interview. Yeah.
But, and again, I wrote another paper, knowing you were coming, I thought it's quite difficult to describe the brain and all the areas, the main areas of the brain, because you don't target a brain.
You
target
specific areas.
Specific areas of the brain. And knowing you were coming, and you're not the only person that's asked me, how do you make a person do this or how do you make a person do that? So I actually wrote your paper, especially for you. Although before I finished the paper, word had got out that I was writing it. People from all over the world were saying, can I have the first copy? So copies have gone out in desperation and for lawsuits. But it was written for you, Alison.
Wow.
And you haven't seen it.
Appreciate it. You helped us this.
I didn't know you. I don't think I knew that you were doing that. I don't know what to say, Barry. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I've
Thank
written
you.
it for you, and
Well,
you can take this with you.
Thank you.
I'll pass it over in a minute. And I've got here that the title is Addiction,
cell phones.
because you can addict people.
Right.
Addiction and harm from cell phones. And I only started this a month ago, because when you said I'm coming, and I thought, there's something in my mind that would help you, and this is for you. I wrote this whole paper for you,
Wow.
although you will see it in other countries, but when you go there, you can say, and
Yeah.
I'll write on it, dedicated to Alison.
Oh.
So I
That's really nice.
I put in how the brain is changed through what is known as entropy.
Yeah.
And then I've listed the main areas of the brain that are being targeted. And in this page here, I've named them on this one. This page, I've written down what each particular part of the brain can make you do.
Very interesting.
Everything from
That's what I do with my
Violence
thermal
to-
images.
everything from violence to you name it, and it can make you do it. So I've listed there where if you change that part of the brain, what it will make you do.
Okay, that is very, very interesting.
Okay.
That will interest our lawyer also a lot.
What I will do.
It seems to correspond to actually where the implants are.
Oh, this is
Is
why.
that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking when I saw it.
Yeah.
I was wondering something very, which I've always wondered. It's probably because it's the same frequencies everywhere that I use. I don't know.
No.
I can get
It's not.
targeted. No, it's not.
No, it's
I
not.
can get targeted wherever I go. For example, tonight, we slept, not far from here in a flat that we rented. I was targeted the whole night, radiated the whole night, so I haven't slept. But it is wherever I go. How can I do that?
Oh, easy. Hang on.
Is it by satellite? I mean, that's my guess. But I mean, then it seems
It
very
depends
far,
on the network
satellite.
system and how
Or
the
the phone
network system
network,
is set
or-
up.
But I get targeted wherever I go.
Right,
Uh,
but you have to understand there's towers outside, there's different alarm settings, everywhere you go is a different component.
Yeah.
There's open access points, there's different,
Yeah, they're using
Oh.
a light in my apartment to attack me. They're hacking into a light bulb. You've got that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amy was talking about that
Yeah.
the other day. Yeah. That
They
is
do all
possible.
sorts of stuff.
It's incredible. Yeah.
yeah,
And I
but
must say, I don't know if Barry has special protection in his house, but this is the only place where it's like really
Dedicated to
at the
others.
moment.
Yeah, your own research paper dedicated specifically to you.
That's great. Thank you so much.
I
That's really nice.
don't know what to
Yeah.
say. I'm quite speechless. Thank you.
That's okay. But it tells you there which part of the brain you can
It's
go for
Really
and
interesting.
what part of the body it will change.
yeah, that's what I do with my thermal imaging. I've been picking up heat signatures on the head
Yeah.
and can identify the locations
That's
of
a-
where they're being hit.
Coming back to this, coming back now, what was I going to get some papers? Hang on.
This paper is
Yeah, no, no.
really, really
I've got
interesting.
specific papers that.
What hand?
No, no, no,
Sure.
no.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I've got specific papers where there is a lot of published research that can help you. Well, I can obviously help you. And the other man, there's only two of us on the planet I know that are doing what we do. You heard of Jerry Flynn?
You tells me about him.
He's a captain in the intelligence service for Five Eyes. Five Eyes is America, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. We all share the same secrets.
Right.
But like me, when he realised the death toll from this, from all of this going on around the world now, is going to be around 2 billion people.
Mhm.
That's provable. They're going to kill 2 billion people with this technology. And just as a rough summary, 1941, I think I've got it written down here. Hang on a minute. 1949, there we are. 1949, mind control was possible. 1950, most of the brain's frequencies were identified and used in mind control. In 1956, the pulses that changed the way the brain thought were used. And you can, by pulses, you can change or cause birth defects, organ failure, whole body organism failure. So I've got a draft on the back of my neck. I'll just shut this door. So you could have a whole body failure. That's it. Whole body failure in 1956. Of course, 1962, you had Pandora, which involved hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Pandora, the Americans checked for all cellular damage, brain function, emotion, moods. It was adopted by the US military by 65. Cancer was proven in 71, and the blood-brain barrier could be breached in 71, which means they had access to your brain.
I think that's the interview I had. It was the
And-
70s.
And 1972, you had crowd control by microwaves and annihilating all crowds. I'll run down some, the book I recommend you get. I'll just read out a few of these, but it goes back, I said, to 1949, Operation Lydia, was used as a microwave weapon. It was used again 50-52. Cataracts could be brought in the eyes in 52. 56, they knew it was all harmful and became the perfect weapon. 62, Pandora. 65, they adopted the thermal level that microwaves could be used with. And in fact, it goes on, I think, the last from the Senate, yeah, I've got it here. This may surprise you, but in 1990, Operation Sleeping Beauty, Ronald Reagan legalized all microwaves and microwave weapons to be used for harm, and that was in the 90s. Now we have the latest weapon, which is, what do they call it, the latest weapon? The Growler. They call it the Growler, which can be used from vehicles, drones, anything like that. But everything you want in terms of names, dates, places that you can use in court for evidence, everything you want is in those two books.
Okay.
Okay? What you need to do is you need to buy those two books.
Okay. No problem. Do I
Okay.
get them like on the internet or?
Do you want to write down the...
I've got it.
Yes.
You gave me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we
Okay.
will order them.
But everything I've read here is in those two books. That's written down by Jerry Flynn.
Okay.
And that is really all you want. And you can prove everything from those two books, basically.
Okay.
Your question was, how do they follow you around
Wherever I go.
and know exactly where you are?
Yeah.
And
But I have not a lot of implants in me. That's,
Yeah. You're not going to like my answer, but I have to be brutally honest when I answer. Is you are causing it to yourself.
What do you mean?
you are responsible for making yourself an easy target.
In what way?
You carry a cell phone.
Ah, okay.
Right, now,
Right.
cell phones, a lot of them, when they are manufactured, some of the chips come from China.
All of them now these days, right?
Some of them are from the Motorola, United States,
Right.
which are the main two people. They work with other nations, but what we know is in some of these cell phones, the chips can be activated from another country without you even knowing, and without the person manufacturing the cell phone doesn't know. So you buy a cell phone and the chips, they have many thousands of combinations that can go through in the binary arithmetic, many thousands. And from another country, all they have to do, because they will know you are where you are, because all they have to do to the chip that they put in, be it China, the secret services of the, yeah, careful with him, he might fall on the floor.
Yeah, I was just moving it for that purpose.
Whether it be China or somewhere else, they can ask the chips at any time to switch on, send their signal back, and by carrying your cell phone, even when it's off, totally off,
Yeah.
that it can be switched on. They have facial recognition, so anybody you're talking to, the chances are you will have a picture on your cell phone when you have taken photographs or pictures. They'll have all of those pictures, all of the names and the addresses where these people belong, where they work. They can then go to their houses. They can ask your cell phone to read a message that is from inside your body, from an implant. You can send a message to an implant. If you go to a hospital to be tested for an implant, they can say, turn yourself off. And when the people in the X-ray department, they say, well, look, you've got a little dot there, but it could be calcium oxide, it could be
That's what they usually say, yeah.
something,
Yeah.
but it's not transmitting. It's perfectly safe. It's your imagination. And then when you come away, they can make it come on again. And they can control virtually around 10,500 different biological functions in your body and all of your neurological functions. And if you put the combination together, there are, when I was debriefing spies in the Cold War, I made a list of, I don't know if you've got it, I made a list of, I'll give it to you, I think it was 30 or 40 neurological states and physiological states that could be induced from different microwave pulses. The list today, now, when I did the list, it was 30 to 40. The list today is on this sheet, it's not on that sheet. Yeah, here we are. Got this for you again. I made a list, I spent 11 years talking to spies. And during the Cold War, they could change heartbeat, sleep pattern, paranoia, hallucinations, depression, suicide, anger management, sexual violence, seizures, epileptics, sensory problems, confusion, mania, hyperactivity. That was all possible.
Isn't that all part of the sleep deprivation tactic, though? Like, for instance, even
Yeah,
with
and
eyesight.
I've written the pulse frequency that will cause it.
That's very interesting.
Okay. Which again you
Could
can
we
have.
take
Sorry,
copies of this?
you can copy it.
Okay.
It's photocopy free.
Okay.
And the other one you may want.
I'll go
Um,
in a minute.
Okay, great.
I wrote a paper. Are you being targeted? The answer may surprise you. And I've written a biography really of targeting satellites, governments, and in it I've written the pattern numbers where you can just apply for the machine that does it, because you've got the pattern number of the voice to skull, where you can't hear, nobody else can hear the voice, only you, and it goes into your brain and tells you what to do. I don't know if you know how that was developed
I do.
for deaf people.
Well, in
Or to prevent
that-
shoplifting.
Shoplifting, yeah. But it originally started for deaf people. So the deaf, you could send a signal from a little cell phone.
Yeah.
You could type out a message. It would go
they also
into their,
did the study
into
on
their
people in
ear.
comas.
and it would be transmitted to the brain, and you could physically talk to them.
Yeah, I see.
But of course, then it came over for shoplifting, and now, of course, it's being used by the military. Okay. Oops.
Oops.
Now, question with the voice to skull technology. I've been capturing a lot of information where they're using the scripts behind the transmissions of the electrical grid systems.
Yeah.
Now, what type of software or equipment can help us identify those scripts in that transmission in order to prove the different types of programs that are being used?
You won't.
Because when I hear them on their radio systems, they say, "Oh, we're naked all the time. We're naked,"
Yeah.
but they're easily identifiable through spectrums. When I'm analyzing the spectrums, I could see their EVMs, like
Okay.
their air vector management systems, their QAM systems, and identify the drone signatures inside of those spectrums. So if we could visually see them on the spectrums, there's got a way to be able to analyze the scripts and be able to see the scripts.
Can you show Barry any of this?
Well, I know what it is. The chances are they will have a secret password. They'll have a secret password in binary that if you downloaded it onto an oscilloscope, you wouldn't be able to identify what the message was.
Well, I could identify they sent the
you
messaging
identify they
through
sent it.
an INF. I could
Yeah.
identify it that way. But you're right, I can't decode it
No.
or decrypt it in order to, because it's through a victim's file.
Yeah.
Only way you would be able to decode it is to capture it in real time, though, right?
Yeah. So you're standing in court and you're saying to the jury that I'm being told to take all my clothes off in the middle of this store, and the judge will say, have you deciphered or decrypted the actual message got a printout that says, take all your clothes off in the middle of the store? And your answer will be no.
No.
Well,
Because-
wouldn't that be done through cryptography though?
They use the same,
Can they
same
be done?
codes that they use to protect themselves against everybody they want to protect themselves against. So the chances of you breaking that code are almost zero. It is so complicated.
Isn't that a form of cryptography though?
Yeah, but they will have trillions upon trillions of combinations that you have got to get
Okay.
through. Even it's so it would be it would be sort of 10 to the power 12 or something combinations that they could have. There's more atoms in the planet, or not as many atoms in the planet as the number of ways you would have to be able to decipher it. But if you had a chip in your body or something, that will be programmed to pick this up.
Well, that would be
Right.
used for the tone
Yeah.
generators, right?
So
In order for the
so the
connection.
judge would say to you, can you print this down? And I can read the words, you say no. And then he will say, well, how do you know
Because I could
that
identify
it's
the
not
frequency.
your brain saying to you, I want to strip off in the middle of the store?
Yeah.
You can't prove it isn't.
Well, that's not true. With my forensic technique, we
Yeah, but
can.
I'm involved in court cases with this. And knowing it's happening and knowing you are being targeted is a whole world away from proving it in court.
Yeah.
A whole,
Correct. That's true.
um,
But there's got to be a way.
well, there isn't a way. This is why it is so successful.
Yeah, I know, but a lot of the victims that are turning to us have implants. And
Well, a lot of people have implants they don't even know they're nanotubes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been capturing. They've been talking about the tubes.
Yeah, nanotubes.
Tubes, but I couldn't figure out what type of tubes
But
they
they-
were.
nanotubes.
And
Okay.
we need to figure that concept out in order to correlate the information that I'm collecting.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing these reports, I can make sure that they're accurately done and validate that information.
I'm with you.
Okay.
You can have nanotubes which are carbon, which you know.
Right.
You can also have them done in a crystal. Various crystals can form nanotubes. They can make, in this day and age, you can probably make one from substances that are not even known on the periodic table, where you have, if you think of MIT, probably the best, brainiest university on the planet, if you put a team of PhD students together and say, here's a grant for 12 years, produce something that will hold this amount of electronic or this amount of poison or this amount of substance. And they would do it. They would do it in their 12 years. And you have a substance that isn't even known, that only they know.
What about the cloning, though, with the nanotubes?
We're short of cloning.
I know that they're able to clone or mirror, I guess you might say.
Yeah, there are two types. Now, are you talking about the nanotube itself, cloning itself?
Yes,
Those are crystals.
those are the crystals.
Crystals,
Okay, so
crystals clone themselves. That's why crystals grow. But
Oh,
you
it's like
can't.
this self-assembling and auto-replicating.
Yeah. They self-assemble, and it wouldn't surprise me where you have some form of meiosis or mitosis in an artificial virus. Because viruses clone themselves. In fact, a virus can clone itself into tens of millions of clones. If you were to feed it one cell with the right substances to get into and clone itself. It's how colds and flu.
What about the microtubes?
Well, those are
Or
slightly bigger nanotubes.
okay. Well, I know there's usually adjustment in size, but
Hmm.
doesn't each one have different capabilities in regard to
absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. That they have the capability is down to the imagination or the skill of the person building it or making it. And it isn't difficult to say to a team of scientists, I want you to make something that will do this. The chances are, with unlimited funds, unlimited laboratory conditions, they will be able to make it over 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. They can already, what's his name? Fenter? Craig Fenter? Something like that. There's a man, and he can produce life in a test tube. Not life as we know it, but he can produce, I think it's Craig Fenter or Craig Fenter. But he can already produce cells or substances that will reproduce themselves. So you can reproduce cells, and you can reproduce them with whatever you want inside them. And when you come to
I'm thinking, because you said crystals, right? A couple of years ago, because I've got Morgellons, so there were actually visible material, fibers and other things coming out of my skin. So I took that to a university professor, toxologist, and I said, listen, this comes out of my skin. I would like you to take samples and analyze this and tell me what's the composition of this, And he came back saying, well, I could not, at least that's in the report, totally identify it. So they were faced with something new, it's at least what they claimed. But there was some crystal material in it, and that it was also artificial. It was something with polymer structures. So, well, I figured that was nanotechnology, but they could not totally identify it. But there was definitely crystal or crystalline material, something in with it. So that's what I was thinking when you talked about the nanotubes and the crystals. And I have the laboratory reports.
But the number of what you can ask them to do, I mean, they work mathematically, they work on the factorial mathematics. In other words, if they wanted to put something in, you could have one substance, and let's say you had 12 substances in atomic levels. You could have the damage that could be done by one mixed with the damage that could be done by two, and then three. So it's 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. And by the time you get up to 30, which isn't beyond people, you could introduce virtually everything to everybody on the planet. Because the multiples when you get into the trillions and trillions and trillions. So it is a phenomenal weapon.
Well, isn't it time now to call actually Paolo because we're 12?
Yeah,
So we'll,
you need to ask
you know,
him to call.
yeah.
That's the lawyer would like to actually talk to you if that's
Yeah.
possible because he's found what he believes is a way.
Well, you'll have to use one of your phones.
yeah, of course, we will
yeah,
use mine. Our lawyer Paolo is organizing a conference together with Equator on the 3rd of December, where he wanted Amy to present how she's collecting evidence, but he wants to invite other scientists as well. And I know it's a bit short notice, but it would be great if Barry could be there, you know, because there will be other scientists as well. There will be also a physicist that we know. It's a former military. He's also a psychotronic weapons expert, and he will be there. He's called Daniel Lepris. We were hoping to invite you, and Amy will be presenting, but not only Amy. There will be doctors there and other lawyers that our lawyers inviting. And we will do that in preparation of the hopeful court case that we're going to organize. So we'll get Paolo now.
This is our lawyer to just explain.
Oui, bonjour Paolo. Voilà. On est ici avec Barry Trow, hein. Il nous a déjà expliqué vraiment des choses super intéressantes. On a essayé de le motiver peut-être de venir nous rejoindre pour la conférence du 3 décembre. Mais maintenant, parce que je vais traduire en anglais. Donc, voilà. Est-ce que tu auras des questions spéciales à lui poser?
Alors, des questions spéciales, non. La seule chose, peut-être, la seule chose que je voudrais poser comme question, c'est de savoir si les appareils qui sont disponibles pour toi, ou les appareils qui sont disponibles peuvent-elles donc permettre d'établir scientifiquement qu'une lésion physique émane des ondes électromagnétiques. Donc en gros, quand il y a une lésion physique, est-ce qu'il y a des appareils qui permettent de déterminer avec certitude que cette lésion physique émane d'ondes électromagnétiques?
Ok, donc par exemple une brûlure, tu veux dire?
Voilà, une brûlure émanant des ondes électromagnétiques. Est-ce qu'il y a un appareil qui permet de dire, voilà, ça, c'est lié à des ondes électromagnétiques?
Okay. So, Barry, here's one question precisely. For example, if you have a lesion or a burn mark, can we scientifically prove 100% that this burn mark is done by an electromagnetic weapon? For example, is there means? With 100% certainties that,
En Angleterre. Donc, il y a un expert qui...
oui, alors,
That's not true. Because I'm identifying the burn marks on the victims' bodies.
But can you prove it's from an electromagnetic weapon and not anything else?
We could prove that through the central nervous system that it's attacking.
Okay, you've got my interest.
I could actually go over that and show you with that, yeah.
Okay, well, Amy's saying yes, I'm saying no. I'd be interested to hear.
Il dit que, selon lui, on peut pas le prouver avec 100% de certitude, mais Amy dit que oui. Donc, il dit qu'il sera intéressé pour que Amy explique comment elle le prouve avec 100% de certitude. Par contre, il nous a donné toute une liste, tous les problèmes de santé que ces armes peuvent causer, et comment, et quelles armes on utilise pour telle ou telle chose, et quelle fréquence. Ça, oui.
C'est ça. Parce que l'idée, c'est pour lui expliquer, c'est que les personnes victimes d'ondes électromagnétiques qui ont des lésions physiques à cause de ça, il faut pouvoir prouver que c'est par le biais des ondes.
Oui.
Et donc, il faudrait idéalement un outil, donc une technique,
Mhm.
qui permet de l'établir scientifiquement,
Mhm.
et pas dans le cadre d'une procédure judiciaire.
Bien sûr, oui.
Donc c'est ça l'objectif.
Oui.
En fait.
I'm thinking of a case where it went to court and the person had a burn mark
Yeah.
in the shape, in a specific shape
Mhm.
that could only come from a weapon.
Ah.
But the judge said anything else that shape
Oui, yeah.
could have caused that burn, and a burn in the skin or a burn in the flesh is a burn in the skin. You can tell if it's boiling water or fire or a stamp from
Yeah.
something red hot,
Yeah.
but you can't prove that an electromagnetic wave has burnt you.
Ah. Ok, il pense à par exemple à une
Amy,
procédure
correct me.
où il y avait
No,
un,
actually you can't.
euh,
Because
une
of the
victime qui avait-
different types of weapon
Ah, ok.
systems,
Bon, ils discutent ici, ils
including,
sont pas d'accord. Est-ce que Paolo, tu penses que ça serait bien si
you were
Larry
talking
pouvait
about
venir à la conférence du 3
thermomolecular
décembre
waves.
et qui peut apporter
right?
tout
Those
son matériel,
thermomolecular
enfin,
waves
toutes
can
les choses
affect
qui
the
veulent
body
montrer,
in a
qui pourraient
physical
être
manner.
intéressants pour
They
notre
can
dossier
be
de
picked
justice et
up
t'expliquer
through
tout
a
ça,
thermal imaging machine.
enfin,
Identifying
de vive voix, je
areas
pense que ça
within the
serait, ça
body.
serait bien s'il
You're
pouvait
right.
venir pour cette
You're
conférence.
right.
Mais ça, il faut lui poser la question.
Oui, parce que il explique par exemple qu'ils ont eu un cours, enfin un dossier en justice où la personne avait ici sur la trempe une brûlure d'une forme vraiment très spécifique. Et alors lui il a pu montrer, ben en fait cette brûlure là, elle peut venir que de cette arme là. Ça fait exactement ce genre de forme de brûlure.
Et c'était reconnu par la justice.
Et ben, le juge a dit non, mais n'importe quel autre, objet blessant pourrait faire ça. Mais en fait, lui était pas d'accord parce que cette arme-là fait vraiment exactement cette brûlure-là, quoi. Enfin, cette forme.
Il faut voir avec lui s'il peut être présent ou pas et s'il me tient au courant. Pour l'instant, je suis averti, en fait.
Oui.
Mais donc, voir un peu s'il peut être là.
Ok.
Et on se tient au courant, Mélanie, ça va?
Oui, on lui perd évidemment ses frais, quoi, mais je pense qu'il faut vraiment essayer qu'il soit là, quoi. Donc ça sera le mieux. Okay, Paolo would really appreciate if you could come to Belgium for the conference and you could, talk together about all this. I think it would really be fantastic.
What we're saying here, you've got thermal imaging there,
Okay, yeah,
which is infrared, not microwave.
yeah, that's what I need. Yeah.
You've got, and I'm agreeing with Amy there. And I've seen this before.
Mhm.
You've got thermal imaging, which is infrared,
Yeah.
not microwave.
Okay.
Now, thermal imaging picking up heat, and you can also transmit heat. Yep.
But with the reflections of the wounds of when they're being physically hit
Yep.
and identifying them as those radiation burns, we could prove through the thermal imaging that same spot in that same location of that mark and that heat
I'm
signature.
agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing that you've got little implants there, or whatever is there, and you've got thermal imaging around it.
Mhm.
So you've got your implant, you've got your thermal imaging, and you can follow the trail of the thermal imaging, and it matches perfectly the weapon.
Right.
Right. In court, against a barrister, you've got the burn marks around. Now, your argument is these implants are there, the burn mark should look like this, and it does look like this. Therefore, these microorganisms or these pieces of apparatus have caused the burn.
Right.
Okay? So I agree with that, no problem.
Right.
Okay? But a barrister will come back at you in court and say, yes, something has produced heat. They have produced heat, is what you're saying. They have produced heat. It can be picked up by thermal imaging. And you have a picture of around these areas picked up with thermal imaging. This is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
But I also have the audio evidence to prove the radio communications, to prove the attacks of the location where they hit.
And you approve the attack. Okay. But, and I'm going into the atomic physics here, but can you, if you put that before a jury and said, this is causing this, here is the sound, make up your mind's jury. Okay? The jury will probably say, yes, in the balance of probability, this caused this, and we will agree with Amy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're saying to me, does the skin burn differently than if you put a hot iron on, or you've got nails in your bones holding them together, you've got AO plating to strengthen bones or something, and they have warmed up and are causing burning. It's still, the process of burning is that it's
The process of burning also has to deal with the sensories of the nerves.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because each nerve and each component, and depending on where the weapon system hits, gives a different sensation. Whether it is a tingling effect, whether it is a burning effect, whether it is a zapping, or an electrical sensation.
I agree with you, but where I'm coming from, and I'm being the barrister opposing you in court, and you've got to defeat me.
Now, the way that I could prove it simultaneously is by an ECOG, a medical test, where it identifies the nerves that are being affected within the person's body. Identifying the nerves and identifying the physical wound locations on the body can verify the information.
Yeah, and that's fine. But my argument would be, when the skin or the cells start to burn at 0.6 degrees, the heat shock proteins take over the cell, and the cell then collapses at an orderly process of apoptosis, where the cell will defend itself and then will kill itself. Now, you're saying to me, and I'm happy, I'll believe it. If you're saying to me, will the heat shock proteins react differently to one type of burn or another type of burn, like sunbathing, or you put a red hot poker on you, or you burn your finger under a tap? If you're saying to me, you've got a burn, I can identify you've been sunbathing, I can identify you put your hand under a hot tap, I can identify there's a nail holding a plating in your leg, because the burns will be different from those than it will from another source of infrared.
And that's where the measurements coming out into play.
Okay.
Like measuring from one point to another point of the wounds.
Yep. And you can experiment and cause it.
Right. If it's a freckle,
yep.
Right, they're not going to be a specific measurement apart. They're going to be in a blotch or as more as a patch. Right?
Yep.
Kind of like a mosquito bite is random. Ant bites are random.
Yep.
Right? They're not going to be 1 inch apart, 1.5 inches apart, 2 inches apart, all going down the central nervous system.
I can agree with everything you said. But where I'm stuck, I wouldn't like the whole of my case to rest on you can identify one burn from another.
But it will not.
No, but it's just one component.
If it's one
right?
component,
Yeah, it's just one
exactly.
component.
If it's
Yeah.
one component,
But the case is not
But-
based solely on
no,
this.
but you will need. I can see where you are, and I can follow your argument, and I can say yes. I don't have a problem with that.
Mhm.
I don't have a problem at all.
We have the
Yeah.
frequencies
Yeah.
to identify the wounds,
Yeah.
along with the weapon system names and the frequencies of the body that could be identified, along with the neurological links.
I
and
don't have a
connections
problem with that. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I wouldn't rely just on this,
No, we're
and
not
you
relying
could be
just
right.
on
But in court, as a scientist in court, I would want the 40 cases documented saying this has caused this.
Right.
We have 40 cases.
Yeah.
If you could do that, and I've never read a paper, and until I've read something,
Would you like a copy?
when you do, have you written the paper?
I've written multiple reports individually for the victims. Yes.
But you need to write a paper. You need to write a paper proving that A caused B and specifying all of the 40. You might get away with 40.
How many is a proper amount? Like 100?
Oh no, a proper amount is a blind test of several thousand.
Oh, okay.
Can't
Well,
do that, but-
I don't have that.
I'm just saying.
Considering the circumstances, I think 40 is only.
I'm on my way.
I'm saying
Trying to at
I'm
least.
saying you've got
Yeah.
a good one, and you could win with it.
Okay.
Right? But my scientist brain says, okay, now if you had a blind test, you would see for an experiment, and I'm not being difficult with you. I don't want you to be in the dock.
Yeah, I
And
understand. You
if
just want to
you're
play
in
devil's advocate.
I don't want you to be in the dock
Right.
and have somebody when you're right, but because you're right doesn't mean you're going to win.
Right.
Okay? I can follow it and I can say, yes, I can believe that. I don't disbelieve anything you've done. But an experiment, for this to be believed in court, it has to be scientifically reproducible. It has to be reproducible. And you have got to get an independent scientist
Right.
in an independent lab. You give him your method of experiment, and then he will carry out the experiment, or she will carry out the experiment. If theirs agrees with yours, you've won.
Exactly.
You've won.
Right. Right.
Okay? But, and I'm not being difficult here, but
And that's what we're trying to do
Yeah,
with the lawsuit
exactly,
on
yeah.
the 3rd.
yes,
get the
I'm not being
medical-
difficult,
Yeah,
but,
to have some kind of peer review.
but you
That was the idea.
you set out the experiment, you get somebody who is totally ambivalent or everything that's going on, a private laboratory, and you say, I want you to do this experiment. Here are you have the chips, you have the heat, you have the wave frequencies, you have everything. I want 40 experiments carried out on different tissues and nerve fibers, whatever it is you want. They will do it, and they will then send you their professional results. If they match yours, I will say, yes, Amy, you are absolutely correct. Well done. You have proved it to me. Fine, go ahead.
Okay.
But that is what is required in court. Because I'm not talking about you, but there are in the tobacco industry and in the smoking industry and the lead paint industry, the radiation industry, they have all shown to have defrauded their experiments.
Right.
It does go on. Experiments are defrauded, and they will have all their professors appear in court and say, you know, this is our experiment, and no, it's rubbish, it doesn't work. But you've got to get an independent lab, and if someone else was doing that, they could be that you are manipulating and I'm not saying you, it is done, drug companies have done it many times and been picked up for it.
Right.
They manipulate results, and they have statisticians come in and lay statistics down.
Because every victim's wounds are a little bit different, which
Yeah, I agree
varies
with
in
that.
the
I agree with
information
that.
and the reports and my findings. But there are common factors from the victims that I've noticed, like within the brain stem, within the 2 points, within the wrist,
I
and
agree.
that's for motor function and flexibility. Another is part of the central points in the toes, along with the sural and the sciatic nerve. Through the heel and the feet to get your toes to twitch and force movement, manipulation through the body.
I can agree with all that.
Yeah.
And in fact, what I would go one stage further, I would get them, because they will have one, to look at the burn under an electron microscope.
An electron microscope.
An
Okay.
electron microscope. That takes you down to the very atom, and you may be able to show that the electrons are going to different thermal layers as opposed to different burns. You may get to show that.
Quick question. In regards to the manipulation of the body, like for instance with Allison's report, I find a lot of acrylic and amino acids that are being manipulated.
Yeah.
And I noticed on your piece of paper that the central location of the brain, the neurological response, that amino acids could be manipulated from that standpoint.
Can I just add to that?
Can we?
This is important. My amino acids toxicology test is quite shocking. I'm severely depleted in all of them.
So with the amino acids, okay, we got the medical test to prove that her has been depleted. We have the audio evidence of it, and I didn't do the thermals yet, but that correlation, oh crap, I forgot my question. Is there a way?
It'll come back to you, don't it?
Is there a way, I mean, with the electron microscope, that we would be able,
To prove it.
yeah,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
And I've got it here for you. I was going to give you this as well.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. I've got it here.
We can see that.
And I'm not being difficult, but I'm being a scientist.
yeah, and you're right.
Right.
You have to.
If you get an independent person to verify the wavelengths and everything, and they carry out, and theirs are identical to yours, you write the paper, and when I read the paper, I will say, yes, Amy is right. Different burns can cause different symptoms, signs and symptoms.
Would that still be able to prove, like through the dopamines and the endorphins, along with, yeah?
Electron microscope will, yeah.
Okay.
Because,
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect.
Now, what I've got here is mechanisms. Okay, right. Under mechanisms, I'll just put a little asterisk there, are, where are we going? We're on the same wavelength, you and I, Amy.
That's why we're here. We were hoping that your wavelengths would,
There are, hang on.
you know.
Right, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
There should be 13.
Hang on. Yeah, they're not all down here. I've got about 8. Right. I've actually got more than that. Let's have a look. Right, we've got mechanisms. Right, so cryptochrome demyelination, HP facility, retrovirus, fractional species energy. So there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and diagnosis of it here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 ways of diagnosis. What did I say first? 8 to 16 then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 16. 16 tests you can do.
Okay, perfect.
Of asterisks, mechanisms and things there. 16.
Thank you, Barry.
But you'll appreciate where I'm coming from, Amy. Until I read the paper, I can't say you're right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that I'm low on the people testing, you know, even before I started my forensic processing and
Yeah.
going to school for digital forensics and things like that. I tested it out on 200
But
people.
the thing to do is there are 16 different tests there. They can all be found chemically with a spectrometer or your electron microscope. There are 16 different ways, different things that can be tested.
Yeah, I know the electro.
Yeah, but there are 16 there. And when I read the paper, you don't need all 16. When I read the paper, the first thing I will do is say, yeah, Amy is absolutely right. But I can't say yes until I've read the paper. Or you'll all go to court and say, this scientist says yes, and then they say, no, it's not been proven. And then I owe you lots of money.
Yeah,
At least I'm on the right path.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're on exactly the right path. What you need to do is you have to patent your idea.
I've already
She
patented
has
it.
already done that.
Okay?
Yeah, our
Okay.
lawyer asked her too, and
Right, patent your idea.
that's really good.
Now, there are 16 things there you can test. From spectroscopes, electron microscopes, all sorts of things where you can identify one type of burn from another. And if you do that, you write your research paper. You write your research paper, and then this is the scary bit. You write your research paper, you send it to 2 or 3 scientists. They will read it and they will peer review it. And then if they say, no problem here, Amy, then you can publish it. And once you've published it or had it peer reviewed, not even published, once you've had it peer reviewed, then every scientist can say, yes, there are different types of burns for different implants in the body.
All right.
Okay.
You're on the right track.
Great.
Absolutely on the right track.
Okay.
But you've got to have, it's got to be bomb-proof in court.
Yeah, that's it.
Right,
I
and
want
that's what
to-
we're trying to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
you know.
And until that, when anyone asks me, I will say, no, I haven't read it.
That's why I asked about the
Yeah.
phaser waves and the mechanical waves
Yeah.
and the water waves,
Okay?
because using the transmission with the phaser waves,
Mhm.
they stimulate an electromagnetic response to the water waves, which can oscillate, right? they vibrate,
That
force
was-
of vibration moving back and forth.
That was only proven, what you've just said now, was only proven within the last year by Dennis Henshaw, Bristol University. And I'll tell you where it's on my No Hiding Place paper.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
proof is on page 1, where the water molecules, he went a little bit ahead of you, Professor Dennis Henshaw, Bristol University, page 1. He's actually written down the process that says you're right.
Okay, so I'm on the right path.
He's written down the process that says you're right, because he has proven that the energy is accumulative. Now, the people you're arguing against, they have said when the photons come in, and everything travels by photons, when the photons come in the wave, there isn't enough energy in the photon to cause this damage in a cell.
But with like a neural oscillation or a fast vibration, right?
Yeah.
That's where the mechanical waves
Yeah,
come
but-
into play because they
Right.
store energy.
Yeah, no, you're right. But you're going into the ionizing and non-ionizing waves. Now, non-ionizing spectrum, you've got radio waves, long wave, all different types of radio waves. The beginning of ordinary light, they are non-ionizing. In other words, the argument was that each photon coming in, and they travel as individual photons, even though they travel in waves.
Right. Okay.
They are individual photons, but they follow a waveform.
But it doesn't okay.
But I'll come on with this. You've got the wave photon duality here. They travel in waves but act as particles. Now, each photon, and the argument has always been that microwaves and all the other radio waves, each photon does not have enough energy, the quantum energy, to cause this amount of damage when it strikes an atom, to move the electron to produce a wave like X-ray or gamma rays.
What about cold fusion?
Well, hang on, yeah, I'm coming to that. It doesn't have it. Now, and Dennis Henshaw, and it's on page 1 of that,
Yeah.
and our argument right up until this year has been, and I wrote a mathematical paper on it, proving it. My argument has been there is an accumulative effect because there are so many photons so quick that they would act as an accumulation, not one photon. But it could never be proved. And it's only been proven this year. And on page 1 of my No Hiding Place paper, Dennis Henshaw has shown that there is an accumulative effect.
What's his name again? Dennis?
I've got the paper.
You've got the paper and the explanation. He has shown,
It was the public inquiry. It's the annexes.
Dennis Henshaw,
This report is really good.
yeah, it's the one you've submitted to the inquiry.
exactly. Yeah,
Now, Dennis Henshaw
it's the one I preferred.
has proven that the waves are accumulative. It's on page 1. And here, he said, and this is you, that he's just proven what you're wanting me to say. The idea that cell phone radio waves do not have the quantum energy to damage DNA and therefore cannot cause ill health or burning is a fallacy. It is flawed at a number of levels from the very physics upon which it is supposedly based, to chemistry and biology. Most of all, the idea is not borne out that tens of thousands of peer-reviewed studies reporting the biological effects from exposure to electric, magnetic, and electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation, including those associated with radio waves, by use by cell phones. So what he's proven there is that the accumulative effect will produce what you have just said. So you are right, and it's only been proven. I mean, you are thinking ahead of the rest of the world. You've obviously got a brilliant brain there. In terms of
Nobody does that.
in terms of quantum physics, and if you want, I can give you the mathematics to prove it.
Yeah, that would be great.
I wrote a paper on it.
Yeah, that would help me out, at least on a scientific level, be able to correlate all the information that I'm trying to collect,
I
at
wrote
least
a paper.
evidence-wise, you know.
I wrote a paper for 16 university mathematicians. I studied higher maths at university. And I wrote a paper believing that, but mathematics doesn't prove that. And what you've been telling me, everything, he's just proved it. And my mathematics has now been verified. Okay? So you now have the mathematics and him proving that what you have said is correct. So you've got my brain and his brain agreeing with your brain. But until you've had someone else independently do it and put the two together where they identify it, every scientist will say it is not proven, which is my answer.
Right.
I can't stand up in court and say you're right. I know you're right because he's right and I know I'm right.
I don't know I'm right. This is theoretical.
But in court, I would have to say it is not proven. Therefore, it is not right.
I understand. Yeah.
Right? And this is where they are going to get you. But I'll give you the mathematics. And you can quote my mathematics. You've already submitted the paper. If you can get another independent laboratory to do these experiments, compare it to yours, you've won. Write a research paper and have it patented, write a research paper and send it to a magazine and have it published. And then every scientist in the world will then say, when they stand up, including me, and say, yes,
This is
produced by
possible.
Amy, here's the paper, been published.
And this is partly what Paolo's wanting to try to
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I take pictures?
You can keep it.
Oh, okay. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
please. Do you want me to dedicate it to you?
Can I have your signature on it? And
Absolutely.
sign it, you know?
There's 4 pages, right? It's 4 pages. Okay.
You're absolutely magnificent.
So yeah, I'll write it to you, Amy. A-M-Y, Amy.
Yes,
or
sir.
I-E?
No, AMY.
A-M-Y. Okay. Dedicated.
Thank you.
Dedicated to Amy. Wishing you well. I'll sign it. My hand's a bit shaky, but then again, I'm 78 now.
Oh.
Sorry. So will you put a kiss?
Yeah.
Shall I?
Yeah.
There you are. Dedicated to Amy. That's a C. Dedicated to Amy. Now, Amy. And I'll put a kiss there.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna love this.
Alison will be upset now because she didn't get them.
She got her dedicated copy, no?
But that's the mathematics that prove what you've been telling me is that's the mathematics that proves it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
It's 4 pages.
I gotta square up on my mathematics.
Gotta go into the atomic structure there and everything.
Well, you know, this is independent laboratory, what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that
you
does
need to
take me
get-
that we do have a chance to prove this.
Yeah.
You know?
Until you actually have it independently tested and verified, the answer will always be no. And when you asked me the question, whoever it was asked me the question, and I thought,
It was the lawyer, I think, who asked the question.
yeah, the lawyer. When you asked me the question, yeah, the lawyer asked me the question. And I mean,
Right now, you'd have to
I
say
So
no.
agree.
this has to deal more with the potassium, the iron, and the chloride?
yeah,
Okay.
sodium, yeah, that goes with all those.
Which is why a lot of people, when they eat bananas, they get heartburn.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Why are you saying
What,
sorry?
what do they get?
Yeah, you can upset your calcium, chlorine, calcium, sodium, all of those, yeah. But, yeah, when the lawyer asked that,
Yeah.
I keep always here the last 2,000 papers I've read. I have 2,000 papers. And as they come in, then I throw the bottom ones away. But, you know, until I read the paper that says, yes, you're right, then
You have to say no.
everyone in the world will say no.
Right, right.
Yeah, I understand that.
If you want to go into the maths there, Amy, an easy way to go into it is N-E-R-N, Nernst.
Which one?
How do you spell Nernst? N-E-R, Nernst. It's not an English name. Nernst.
N-E-R, nuns?
N-E-N-N-E-R, Nernst. I can't spell it now.
N-U-N-S-T?
Something like that. Any A-level biologist would tell you Nernst, how to spell it. It's
I think I've come up with it. I think I've come across that terminology.
any A-level biologist would tell you. And it's he lays out the mathematics of that going through the experimental stage.
Okay. What about the zeta waves?
Those are in the brain. Oh yeah, I haven't got those. I've just got the first 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean there are more than that, but I only wanted the main ones, just as an example, really.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
But in my brain paper there, the one you've got, I've laid out what they will do anyway. Your next step now is to say, find a nice friendly chemist, biologist, lay out, like when you're at school, you know, doing an experiment, you lay out how to do it and then result, conclusion, just carry on with that. And then if they get the same results you get, you've won. But it's quite an anxious time.
Yeah.
And then, excuse me, and then you've got to send your paper off for peer review to a professor somewhere to peer review it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is primarily what this thing on the 3rd is to do with
Yeah.
peer review.
And that can take some time, peer reviewing, and it's incredibly a nervous time. It is a nervous time. But then, you know, they might come back and say you need to change this and this, You know.
Well, I know I'm not going to be 100% accurate, you know, because one,
Yeah.
I'm only dealing with the basic equipment that I could afford.
Yeah.
You know, and like the one that the electron microscope that could probably cost $1,500 to $2,000.
Yeah, but what are you doing? It's like hiring a JCB. You know, one of these big road diggers. You don't hire. You don't buy a JCB. You hire the driver and the machine
Right.
for an hour. So you can hire a spectroscope, atomic spectroscope, or you can hire the lady and the machine for an hour in a laboratory. And if you're good, and you've got friends at university, a fourth year student, third or fourth year student will do it for you for a quarter of the cost.
Okay.
But since they're a student and they're not really a grad,
No,
would they be considered?
provided
I think
the,
it's the
provided,
professor.
provided the
approves it.
professor
Yeah.
agreed with their result.
Yeah.
They do the maths, they write it out, they show the professor,
Mhm.
and he says, yep, no, this is
That's
okay.
correct.
The professor signs it off, but you're paying students' fees, not
Mhm.
professors' fees.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Okay.
I did.
You get that done.
I've done this research because I know, like, I needed it patented. I know
Yeah.
that I needed to take certain steps in order to validate my
Yeah.
work,
Mhm.
and to get it approved within the court system. So I made sure to do all that proper research.
But what was you asking me about the different waves?
I was asking about the mechanical waves and the water waves and the transference from the energy systems to the points of thresholds on the body. If that makes sense. Or how the mechanical waves can be transferred through the water waves. Because the mechanical waves store the energy, right? So if they do like a neural oscillation or a cold fusion tactic where they're vibrating the electrons as a fast amount of rate, it produces that energy. And then the mechanical wave produces that energy and it could shoot it through the water waves, which our bodies are made out of 60 to 70% water. So how can I know it would go through a path. It has to be sent through a path, right? Through the neurological or the central nervous system. But can that in itself produce enough energy to cause attacks, like the sensations of the nerves, like the tingling sensations, the electrical?
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to figure out the conversion from the mechanical
But
wave
you're-
through the water waves in the body. If that,
You're talking about a longitudinal wave or a transverse wave. I'm trying to work out which one you mean.
well, that has to deal with sound waves. With sound waves,
Yeah, go on.
right? Sound waves and mechanical waves are similar with the transverse and the longitude, but the mechanical
longitudinal
waves
waves,
uses
yeah.
water waves. And since the mechanical waves work with X-rays, microwaves, infrared, infrared, sonic, ultrasonic, weapon systems, that is a key component of how they're producing these effects inside our body. What I'm trying to figure out is the use of the water wave in the mechanical wave, in the sound wave, because both sound waves and mechanical waves use transverse and longitudinal, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no.
Where the mechanical waves is an additional with the water wave.
Yeah.
So one can be converted via frequency to the other, but using the water wave would be a separate component throughout the body. And I'm trying to figure out how that component is separately through the body.
A mechanical wave is a longitudinal wave. In other words, if you have a big long spring, I don't know if you did this at school, or those slinkies they're called, aren't they?
Right.
If you move one, then the energy goes right the way along and pushes the other end.
Right.
That's a mechanical wave. The transverse wave
It's going up
is
and down.
electromagnetic.
Right.
Okay. Now, the transverse wave, if you, I'm trying to easy way to describe this. If you get a glass of water and you put it on top of your radio, and then you turn the music up loud, the water will vibrate because
Okay.
the sound is going into the water and it's producing waves. I don't know what type of wave it will produce in water, but the energy is being transferred atom to atom to atom to atom.
Right.
The energy is
Okay.
and the more dense the substance, the faster the wave travels. It's why sound travels faster underwater than it does in air.
So
Because
it's,
it has to go from atom to atom. And if you, it's the old trick of people that worked on the railways, they would put their ear onto the track and they could hear the train 100 miles away. Because the closer the atomic structure, the faster the energy travels through. Until you get a total vacuum, and now you've got problems. It's why you can't hear sound in space.
There's nothing there for it to use.
There is no mechanical.
but you could capture frequencies in space.
Oh, there is no such thing as empty space.
Right.
There are waves in space we haven't even thought of yet. So yes, you're right again. The mechanical wave will send energy into the water. The water will pick up the mechanical wave. The water will vibrate. It has to. And you have vibrating water along with anything the water is enclosed in. And the energy will disperse through the water without a shadow of a doubt. Because water, if you put pressure in water, all of the water takes the pressure. You can't have a differential in pressure in water. So the water will absorb the energy, and then the energy will be transferred into whatever is around or whatever it's going to go into. It's Kirchhoff's principle. Kirchhoff, Kirchhoff. He has said that when energy goes into anything, then whatever it is will vibrate and pass on that particular amount of energy. And another one that proved this was Lemar, Lemar, or Lamer. It's Lemar. He proved as well that water will transfer energy, frequency to frequency. So whatever you're putting into the water will also leave the water and carry on. So you're right insofar as if you vibrate water in the body, the vibrations will leave as a form of energy into the surrounding tissues.
Amy, is this to do with the sweat glands and the whole fusion meaning, or is this something
Well-
else? Is this something else?
This has to, okay, with the sweat glands, I've noticed that they've been able to alter a person's temperature. When they mess up a neurological connection, usually via double link, by accident, right? One person grabs onto another person's link and it messes it up, and it can screw the aim up right?
Yeah.
So it's not connected wrong, can cause the body temperature to heat
Absolutely, yeah.
and overheat, but somehow they were cooling the body down by a ventilation process, which I believe is through the sweat glands. Causing a person to sweat causes a person to release that energy that is being built up until they could disconnect the double link or the cross connection and separate them.
It works out when people use anything with 5G. That's what you get. The 5G wave, and in my paper, this is no hiding place, I've given the wavelengths of all of the microwaves, including 5G. And I've used children here, but you'll probably know this, but the 5G wave, one of them, is the same length as the sweat gland in the skin.
Okay.
Now, when you have something in your body that is the same size as the wave, or a mathematical multiple of the wave. So, for instance, the sweat gland is the same size as 5G. So when 5G hits the sweat gland becomes, because it's wet, the sweat gland becomes an aerial. It's how aerials work.
Right.
An aerial is a conductor. When the wave is a perfect mathematical multiple of the size of whatever it hits, if whatever it hits is a quarter, an eighth, a 16th, or times 1 or times 2 or times 3 of the size, that, if it is a conductor or is wet, will act as an aerial.
So are you saying then when I hear them talking about the aerial units or aerial, it could also be talking about the temperature of the body?
You are. Because what happens with 5G is it causes the sweat glands to produce sweat when the body doesn't need to produce it. And when you produce a fluid on your skin, which is meant to cool the body down, it cools the body down because the wind takes the sweat away. And when it takes the sweat away, it takes the heat away and the fluid. So you're actually causing the body to dehydrate and get cold.
That's why everybody has low salt, low sugar, and is dehydrated out of all the victims.
It's the thing to remember with this, and again, it's in my paper there. I've just done it for the pregnant woman. If you go into paper and everything else, I mean, the paper would be the size of a phone book. I did it
Yeah, mine's 60
for
pages so far.
the 39 weeks of pregnancy. And I've said, when the baby is this size, then this G1, G2, G3, G is this size, and it will cause that organ to act as an aerial, and you are now electrocuting that organ.
Okay.
And one of the frightening things that I discovered that hasn't been discovered yet, it's in my paper, is if you are pregnant but don't know you're pregnant, we'll say up to the first 4 or 5 weeks, if you're pregnant and you don't know you're pregnant and you're not taking any precautions, which is what I wrote about there, on the 15th day of pregnancy, there's no way you would know you're pregnant in 15 days.
Yep.
On the 15th day of pregnancy, and you're using 5G, 5G is the same size as the zygotes or the baby.
Mm-hmm.
5G is the same size. And it is then possible to cause cancer by what is known as epigenetics, where you can change what the gene does without changing the gene structure. So if I had epigenetics in this room, epigenetics would change your behavior without changing you.
So you can hide, they can hide it, sort
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
So epigenetics, as it just so happens, on the
Really terrifying.
on the 15th day of pregnancy, with the genetics, what it is doing, it is balancing the cellular structures and telling them where to go. And if a cell makes a mistake, then you get cancer.
Mhm.
And it is possible on your 15th day of pregnancy to give your baby
Program it,
cancer before it's even made. So that your baby is born with cancer
Mhm.
before, from the 15th day. That is provable. And the other thing that people don't know about, and you're welcome to go into this, it's in my first paper, which is, I wrote a paper called Wi-Fi, a thalidomide in the making. I wrote it for a 12-year-old girl. And what I proved there was that, and with this in 5G, if you damage the mitochondrial DNA in the baby, and the baby is a girl, the mitochondrial DNA in the female line
It's damaged.
is irreparable. So let's say your baby is growing in you, and 5G or 4G or 3G damages the mitochondrial DNA in a particular organ and causes cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, any of the genetic.
That's why they attack the fetuses.
Yeah. So if it causes any of those, when you have a baby, the mitochondrial DNA is passed from mother to child to child to child to daughter
Yeah.
to daughter until that line
damage
stops.
her eggs and her eggs and her
Yeah,
eggs. And
yeah, it goes on. So if you are pregnant and you cause mitochondrial DNA in your baby, then every female in that line will pass
Damage,
it on.
yeah.
Will pass it on. Cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, whatever.
What is that called? What is that terminology called? Or
Epigenetics.
epigenetics.
Yeah. Epigenetics.
Because when
You change what the gene does without changing the structure of the gene. When I explain this at lectures, I say it's like if you've got a class at school and they're all well behaved, and then you get a really naughty child comes in. The naughty child can get everybody else into trouble, but walks out untroubled itself. And we've all seen those. That sort of epigenetic, without changing the gene. So you change it.
Really terrifying.
Yes, it is, yeah.
It's very frightening. And what I say, and you can run with this, Amy. The mathematics with this, it is published. It is published by the World Health Organization, and it is in my Wi-Fi, a thalidomide in the making paper. Do you have that one?
I've got it, yeah.
Yeah, it's in there. And what has been proven in there, but has been kept top secret, is that only 1 in 8 children eventually, 1 in 8 will be born healthy. after 3 generations,
That's where we're at.
what it actually says is, what is proven is that around it's 47.7% of births will be genetically damaged somehow. Now, let's say half for simplicity in mathematics. So you have a population in Belgium. Take the Belgian population, a half of exposed women are going to have genetically disabled children in 1 generation. That'll be 20 years. 20 years is a generation. Now, you've now got surviving 50% of the women with good ovaries. 20 years later,
But that's the attacks on
you've
the
got
reproductive
half of those,
systems, right?
half of those, which is 25%.
25%.
So you go from a half of your population in Belgium to the first lot of births, then it is a quarter of the births, then an eighth of the births, and you've only gone 3 generations, 60 years. And the science is predicted that in 60 years, only 1 in 8 of your children are going to be born healthy. 1 in 8. And there is no way you can run your country with 1 in 8 being
Yeah, absolutely.
healthy. The only way you will survive, because a lot of the ones not born will be miscarried or stillborn. In 60 years, if nothing is done, and I say this at conferences, all of my conferences, only 1 in 8,
On the third.
only 1 in 8, and this is the World Health Organization saying this, their own scientists, not me, only 1 in 8 will be born healthy. Then the only way you will run your country is to do what we had to do at the end of the war, when we had so many people killed. The mothers were told to have babies because we needed to build up the population, because we needed babies, and all of the priorities, and I was born at the end of the war, and all of the milk and the food went to the children, not the mothers, not the workers. It came to us in school. And during the school holidays, you had to go into school every day in the school holidays,
Drink your milk.
even Christmas Day, to have milk and to have malt and anything else they could give you to eat. Every day you were registered. You went in. Those children had to be born healthy. And another thing they did is they sent you to a dentist and they pulled out most of your teeth, drilled out most of your teeth, because there was no toothpaste, no toothbrushes, there was no way you could clean your teeth. So you all went to the dentist where you were gassed. They drilled all of your teeth and put in fillings so you couldn't get toothache. Because if you got toothache, there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
See, and you could die from toothache. And we had sort of polio, all the other childhood diseases that were still going round. So all of the help went to the children. But the only way we could run our country was to get hundreds and thousands of people in from all of the other countries to run the factories, run the health service, drive the buses, pay the taxes. And you're going to be in that position, any country's going to be in that position. But it's documented that only 1 in 8 in 6 years' time is going to be alive, and that's published by the World Health Organization.
Well, this is clearly genocide.
Yes,
It is
because
genocide.
It's
And Professor Dominic Bohim.
Yeah.
Bopom.
Nee, is het wel.
Yeah. Bopom.
Belpom.
Bopom.
Wait.
No, it's not Dominic Bopom. Something like
Yeah.
Bopom.
I think Dominic Belpom.
Belpom. He's in
He's
France.
deceased now. I think he's dead now.
No, he's not. No.
No?
No,
That was the wrong information. I got.
Yeah, but he's just started up a group of scientists to take the industry to the World Court. I know that because I've supplied them all with our documents, Cold War documents. Yeah, Dominic Belpom.
Belpom, yeah, in Paris, right?
Yeah. Dominic Belpom.
Yeah, I wanted to reach out to him, but then I was told he was deceased.
But he's taking people to the World Court, the scientists to the World Court.
Okay, well,
to stop
get in
this.
touch with him then.
But the thing is, the good news is, not every country is doing this. The bad news is, and I've said this in lectures, the countries not doing this are the Soviet Union, China, North Korea, Indonesia. All of the countries
Third world.
do not like Europe and the West. They are building their populations up. In China, and it's in my paper, if you have had intercourse as a lady and you have to prove to the police that you have not had it, or when you did, that they will stop you in the street and say, when did you last have intercourse? If it was within 15 days and you're not wearing
You have this
a
protection.
lead apron, you will go to jail.
Yeah. I read that in your paper.
You will go to
unbelievable.
jail.
Yeah.
You're obliged when you're pregnant to
Wear an apron.
yeah.
And they will send you to jail because you are not protecting
Yeah.
your future
Yeah.
generations. You are being careless.
I found it incredible. I read it in the
And
paper.
Russia have got lots of rules like that to protect school children,
Mm-hmm.
but we are not. The United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, we're taking no precautions, and we are going to get, as it started, a slow influx of immigration from the countries, and they are getting jobs, being respectful. They are getting the jobs, they are getting the right to vote because they're there several years, and then they have status, national status. But it's going to be where all of those countries have all of the status to vote, and then they get on the government and the council, and there will be no East and West. It will then just be one whole generation of Chinese and Russian. And this is what we are trying to stop.
That's why the U.S. blocked lead paint.
Yeah.
Because it was stopping all the microwave radiation.
What I'm saying to you is, when we go back to one of our earlier questions, is some of the chips put into your cell phones and computers are put there in sometimes, not every single one, but they are put there by the Chinese or the Russians or the Americans. And the first thing I say when somebody who is being targeted rings me up, and I can get 10 a day, I say, the first thing you must do is throw your cell phone into a bucket of water. And they say, no. And I say, well, then forget talking to me, because they will know everywhere you are. They will know everybody you've talked to. They will know your health, because it can monitor your heartbeat. They have chips that can monitor the heat in which part of your brain is working.
Right.
They will know your anxiety state. They will know if you're pregnant. They will know how often you have sex, when you go to the loo. They will know how your sleep pattern is. There is nothing you can do that is not being monitored
By your cell phone.
by your cell phone. And
There's over
nowadays,
10,000
you have
modules
smart
to plug in.
digits, you have smart things in your telly, you have smart boxes like Alexia that pass all the information to them, you have smart radios, smart cookers.
Yeah.
They know every time you put a light switch on, everything in your house is relayed, and they know everything. And organised crime can tap into this because it's Wi-Fi, and if it's Wi-Fi, it's easy to pick up. All you need is somebody with a van outside your house and a spectroscope. And
Or
they'll
remote access.
pick up, yeah,
That's
pick
it.
up the ways.
Yeah, I got diagrams and charts.
And it's really frightening they will know everything about you. And when people ring up and I say, throw your cell phone into a bucket of water, and your cell phone is relaying to your chips in your body, and there are lots of different types of chips, giving out lots of different types of chemicals, and through viruses, they can infect that particular virus through a euglena cell, which produces electricity when light or a light ray hits it or magnetic ray hits it, and they can send it via the virus to a particular brain cell, and they can cause the viruses to multiply in that part of the brain.
Now, question. Okay, same thing with the mechanical
I'm going to
waves.
throw you out in 3 minutes.
Okay. And then, quick question. With the mechanical waves, they could also produce the 3 states: gas, liquid, and solid.
Yes.
How can they make it into an aerosol? Or,
They turn it into plasma.
okay, thank you.
They turn it into plasma. Anything.
So, okay, let me write that
Anything.
right.
Because water is incompressible. It's one of the most difficult things to actually compress. Is water. It's why water pistols work. It's why you have tread in your car tires. It's turned into a plasma, and once it's a plasma, it will behave like a gas, and you can use it as a gas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Interesting.
Right, I'm going to throw you out. It's not raining.
I'll give you my card, Barry, and I think we'll be in touch.
I'll keep that, yeah.
I mean, I hope Amy and Alison could come back. I'm going back tomorrow.
Right.
Alison has your phone number, right? So if I need to contact you for any organizational
Alison is-
things,
Alison,
yeah.
Alison is a pain in the backside.
Yeah.
You've got an untapped brain there, Amy.
Yeah, she is brilliant.
Untapped. Use it. You've got a really, really advanced brain there. Use it. Use it now for your thinking. I know you are. You could actually, you're clever enough to get a paper out on this and get it published. The things you've asked me, I would expect a doctoral, in a conversation, in a doctoral setting.
But I don't have that medical degree. I
No,
don't
no,
have
but,
that.
but you have the intelligence. Don't confuse intelligence with knowledge.
Striving to reach the ultimate goal of zero poverty takes more than everyone's hopes and dreams. It takes funding. That's how Citi's helping, by committing $1 trillion in sustainable finance by 2030, because it takes everything to reach zero poverty.
There are various estimates of how big a drain on